Hey, are you here for Danielle?
Yeah, hop on in.
Cool, thanks.
Watch this 21-year-old college student standing outside this bar at exactly 1:47 in the morning. She's staring at her phone. The screen glows against her face in the darkness. She's waiting for her Uber. According to the app, it's 2 minutes away. A gray sedan pulls up to the curb. She glances at it, looks back at her phone one more time, then walks toward the vehicle. She leans into the passenger window briefly. Then she opens the back door and gets inside. The car drives away, disappearing into the Columbia, South Carolina night. That wasn't her Uber. The real Uber would arrive at that exact spot 120 seconds later. The driver would wait, confused, checking his app. His passenger, Samantha Josephson, was nowhere to be found. He'd try calling, no answer. After 2 minutes, he'd cancel the ride and drive away, having no idea that the young woman he was supposed to pick up was already fighting for her life in the back of a stranger's car. Samantha Josephson had less than 16 hours to live. And the man driving that gray sedan, 24-year-old Nathaniel David Rowland, had been circling that neighborhood for hours, waiting for exactly this moment, waiting for someone vulnerable, someone alone, someone who would make one small, fatal mistake. This is the story of how 2 minutes and a single decision changed everything. This is the story of what happened in the hours between that CCTV footage and the moment police would find Nathaniel Rowland's car soaked in so much blood that it pooled in the door panels. Thursday, March 28, 2019, started as an ordinary day for Samantha Josephson. The 21-year-old senior at the University of South Carolina woke up in her off-campus apartment, attended her political science classes, and made plans with her roommates for that evening. Samantha was weeks away from graduation, already accepted to law school, already planning her future. She was the daughter Seymour and Marcy Josephson had raised in Robbinsville, New Jersey. The older sister who protected her younger sibling, Sydney. The girlfriend who texted "I love you" to her boyfriend that evening at 8 p.m., never imagining those might be among her last messages. Samantha was responsible. Her friends knew this. Her family knew this. She was the kind of young woman who color-coded her class notes, who planned her schedule weeks in advance, who always let people know where she was going. She'd grown up in a close-knit family where communication was constant, where checking in wasn't seen as controlling, but as caring. Her mother, Marcy, would later describe their relationship as extraordinarily close. They talked every day, sometimes multiple times. Samantha shared everything with her mother, her fears, her dreams, her daily frustrations and triumphs. She was the one who always checked in, who always let people know where she was, who followed safety protocols. She never walked alone at night. She always used ride-share apps instead of accepting rides from strangers. She did everything right. Her friends joked that Samantha was the mom friend of their group, the one who made sure everyone got home safely, who kept track of who was too drunk to make good decisions, who always had a plan. That Thursday night, Samantha and her roommates decided to go out to 5 Points, the popular entertainment district near campus where college students gathered on weekends. They chose the Bird Dog Bar, a place they'd been to dozens of times before. The evening was exactly what you'd expect. Music, dancing, laughter, the kind of normal college night that thousands of students experience every weekend across America. Samantha posted photos on social media, smiling with her friends, a frozen moment of happiness that would later haunt everyone who looked at it. There was nothing unusual, nothing that signaled danger, nothing that suggested this night would be any different from all the others. Around 1:30 in the morning, Samantha decided to head home. She'd had enough. She was tired. She had things to do the next day. She separated from her roommates momentarily, stepping outside the bar to order her Uber in the quieter street. This was her routine. This was what she always did. The music inside was too loud to hear anything, and she wanted to be able to see the car when it arrived. She pulled out her phone, opened the app, requested a ride. The app showed her exactly what she needed to know: the driver's photo, the license plate number, the make and model of the car. A gray Chevrolet. Estimated arrival time, 2 minutes. Samantha stood on the sidewalk, phone in hand, waiting. She was wearing a black outfit, her hair down, looking like any one of the dozens of other college students who were out that night. To anyone watching, she was unremarkable. Just another young woman waiting for a ride home. She had no idea that just 3 blocks away, Nathaniel David Rowland was driving slowly through those same streets in his gray Chevy Impala, watching, hunting. Nathaniel Rowland wasn't unknown to law enforcement. He had a history, a pattern of behavior that should have raised red flags. He'd been arrested multiple times for minor offenses, nothing that kept him locked up for long, but enough to establish him as someone who operated on the edges of legality. He lived a transient lifestyle, bouncing between friends' houses, sometimes sleeping in his car. He had no stable employment, no clear source of income, but he always seemed to have gas money, always seemed to be driving around. Neighbors who knew him described Rowland as quiet, unremarkable. Some said he was polite when you spoke to him. Others said there was something off about him, something they couldn't quite articulate but that made them uncomfortable. He had a way of staring too long, of appearing in places where he had no obvious reason to be. On that Thursday night, Nathaniel Rowland had been driving through 5 Points for hours. Cell phone records would later show his movements in precise detail. He'd circled the same blocks over and over, driving slowly, watching the crowds of students moving between bars. He'd driven past the Bird Dog at least 4 times before Samantha ever stepped outside. He was looking for something specific, someone alone, someone distracted, someone who would be easy to deceive. The CCTV footage from outside the Bird Dog bar would later be analyzed frame by frame, second by second, minute by minute. It would become the most important piece of evidence in the entire investigation. At 1:47 a.m., the timestamp in the corner of the screen, Samantha Josephson is clearly visible standing alone on the sidewalk. She's looking down at her phone, the universal posture of someone waiting for a ride. The street around her is busy with other students, other cars, the normal chaos of a Thursday night in a college district. Groups of friends walk past her. Other cars slow down, picking up their own passengers. Everything appears normal. Then, at exactly 1:47 and 23 seconds, a gray 4-door sedan pulls up alongside the curb, stopping directly in front of Samantha. She looks up from her phone. She takes a step toward the vehicle. She leans down, speaking to someone through the passenger window. The conversation lasts approximately 8 seconds. Then Samantha walks around to the rear passenger door, opens it, and climbs inside. The door closes. The gray sedan pulls away from the curb, makes a right turn, and drives east down the street. The entire interaction, from the moment the car appeared to the moment it disappeared from frame, lasted 34 seconds. At 1:49 a.m., exactly 2 minutes later, another vehicle pulls up to that same spot. The actual Uber driver Samantha had ordered. He stops at the curb, checks his phone, looks around confused. His app shows his passenger should be right here. He waits. He tries calling the number associated with the ride. It rings and rings. No answer. After 2 minutes of waiting, the driver cancels the trip and drives away. In his incident report later, he'd tell police, "She never got in my car. I never saw her." So what made Samantha Josephson get into Nathaniel Rowland's vehicle? How does a responsible, intelligent college student make a mistake this catastrophic? The answer is devastatingly simple. It was dark. It was late. She'd been drinking, not heavily, but enough to slightly impair her judgment. The gray sedan looked similar enough to what she was expecting. And most critically, Nathaniel Rowland knew exactly what he was doing. Evidence would later suggest he may have called out her name, information easily visible on any rideshare driver's app screen. He may have said, "Samantha? Uber for Samantha?" And in that moment, hearing her own name, seeing a gray car roughly matching what she expected, Samantha made the decision that would cost her everything. She didn't verify the license plate. She didn't ask, "What's my name?" to confirm the driver actually had her ride details. She didn't check the Uber sticker that should have been displayed in the windshield. She didn't take those extra 15 seconds that would have saved her life. She got into the car, and Nathaniel Rowland drove away with her. What happened in the next few minutes would later be reconstructed from evidence, from the child safety locks that were engaged in the back seat, from the desperate attempts Samantha made to use her phone. Almost immediately after pulling away from the curb, Rowland didn't head toward Samantha's apartment like she expected. Instead, he turned in the opposite direction, heading toward the highway that would take them out of Columbia entirely. Samantha must have noticed. She must have said something. "This isn't the right way. Where are you going?" But by then, it was too late. The child safety locks meant she couldn't open the doors from inside. She was trapped in the back seat of a stranger's car, and that stranger was accelerating onto I-77, heading southeast into the darkness. Inside the Bird Dog bar, Samantha's roommates assumed she'd gotten her ride and headed home. They texted her around 2 a.m. "You home safe?" No response, but that wasn't immediately alarming. Maybe she'd gone straight to sleep. Maybe her phone died. They'd check in tomorrow. They stayed at the bar for another hour, finishing their drinks, dancing a bit more, then ordered their own Ubers. They all made it home safely. They all verified their license plates without even thinking about it, muscle memory from years of using rideshare apps. They all climbed into the correct vehicles. They all woke up in their own beds the next morning. But tomorrow came, and Samantha Josephson never came home. Friday morning, 8 a.m. Her roommates woke up to find Samantha's bed empty, still made from the day before. At first, they assumed maybe she'd gone home with her boyfriend. Maybe she'd decided to spend the night elsewhere. But then they checked their messages. Samantha hadn't responded to any texts since 1:45 a.m. They called her phone, straight to voicemail. They called again, still voicemail. They checked Find My Friends, the location-sharing app that all of them used to keep track of each other. Samantha's last known location, 5 Points District, 1:47 a.m. She hadn't moved since. Now they were worried, really worried. Samantha always responded, always. Even if it was just a quick, "I'm fine," or a thumbs-up emoji. Radio silence for this long was completely out of character. By 9 a.m., they'd contacted campus police. By 10 a.m., Samantha's boyfriend received the call and immediately began calling hospitals, jails, anywhere she might have ended up. By 10:30 a.m., Seymour and Marcy Josephson were loading into their car in New Jersey, beginning the 12-hour drive to South Carolina, their hearts already sinking with a parent's worst instinct. Something was very, very wrong. Marcy Josephson would later describe that drive as the longest 12 hours of her life. She couldn't stop calling Samantha's phone, over and over, each time hearing it go to voicemail, each time leaving another message. "Samantha, please call me. I'm not mad. Nobody's mad. Just please let us know you're okay." Her voice breaking more with each message. Seymour drove, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tight his knuckles turned white, his mind racing through possibilities, each one worse than the last. Detective Greg Corbishley of the Columbia Police Department caught the case. A missing college student, last seen in 5 Points around 2 a.m., hadn't been heard from in over 8 hours. The first 24 hours in any missing person case are critical. After that, the statistics become grim. The chances of finding someone alive drop dramatically with every passing hour. The clock was already ticking, and Corbishley knew it. He immediately began interviewing witnesses, the roommates, the boyfriend, the bar staff, anyone who'd seen Samantha that night. The roommates provided crucial information. Samantha had stepped outside to call an Uber around 1:30 or 1:40 a.m. They'd seen her on her phone. Then they'd lost track of her in the crowd, assuming she'd gotten her ride. The boyfriend confirmed he'd received an "I love you" text from Samantha at 8 p.m., but nothing since. The bar staff remembered Samantha being there but couldn't provide specific details about when she'd left or who she'd left with. Then Corbishley pulled her Uber records, and that's when the investigation took its first dark turn. According to Uber's data, Samantha had requested a ride at 1:45 a.m. The driver had arrived at 1:49 a.m. But the ride was never completed. The driver's statement was unequivocal. "She wasn't there. I waited, I called, she never showed up. I never saw her," which meant Samantha had gotten into a different vehicle. Detective Corbishley felt his stomach drop. This wasn't a case of a college student going off the grid for a night. This wasn't someone sleeping off too much alcohol at a friend's house. This was something much worse. Samantha Josephson had been taken. He immediately requested all available CCTV footage from businesses surrounding the Bird Dog bar. Traffic cameras, security systems, anything that might have captured that stretch of sidewalk between 1:45 and 1:50 a.m. And that's when investigators found it. The footage that would break the case wide open and confirm their worst fears. They watched Samantha standing alone, illuminated by the streetlight, her face peaceful and unsuspecting. They watched the gray sedan pull up, so ordinary-looking it could have been anyone's car. They watched her lean into the window, a gesture of trust, of assumption that this was her legitimate ride. They watched her get inside, the door closing behind her with a finality that made every investigator in the room feel sick. And they watched. 2 minutes later, the actual Uber arrived to an empty curb, the driver's confusion visible even through the grainy footage. The realization hit the investigative team like a physical blow. Samantha Josephson had been abducted in plain sight on a busy street with dozens of potential witnesses around. She'd gotten into a stranger's car, believing it was her ride home. And now she was missing, with nearly 12 hours already gone. Detectives enhanced the footage, zooming in on the gray sedan. The license plate was partially visible, though not entirely clear. The letters NW could be made out, but the rest was obscured by the angle and darkness. The car was identified as a Chevrolet Impala, 4-door, gray or silver in color. There was a distinctive dent visible on the rear panel, and the front passenger side was missing a hubcap. These identifying features would prove crucial, but there are thousands of gray Chevrolet Impalas in South Carolina. Without a full plate number, without more information, finding this specific vehicle would be nearly impossible. Detectives needed more footage. They needed to trace where that car went after leaving 5 points. Every minute that passed was a minute Samantha might still be alive, might still be saved. The urgency was overwhelming. Friday afternoon, 4 p.m. The Josephson family was still driving south, still desperately hoping for good news, when the call came through on Detective Corbishley's radio. A body had been found. Turkey hunters in rural Clarendon County, about 65 miles southeast of Columbia, had been walking through woods off a dirt road when they discovered something in the brush. A young woman, deceased. They'd immediately called 911. The location was remote, isolated, exactly the kind of place someone would choose if they wanted to dispose of evidence. The hunters had only found the body by accident, their dogs leading them off the trail and into the deeper woods where no one would normally walk. The coroner arrived. The police sealed the scene. And as details began filtering back to Columbia Police Headquarters, every investigator involved in Samantha Josephson's disappearance felt their hearts sink. The description matched. Young woman, early 20s, dark hair. The location matched the direction that gray sedan had been traveling based on traffic camera footage. And the timeline matched, the estimated time of death falling in the early morning hours, just hours after Samantha had vanished. The Josephson family was still an hour away from Columbia when Detective Corbishley made the call he'd been dreading. "We need you to come to the coroner's office when you arrive." Seymour Josephson would later say he knew in that moment, before they told him, before the official identification, he knew. That tone in the detective's voice, that specific request, he knew his daughter was gone. Marcy, sitting in the passenger seat, immediately started crying, not even needing to hear the words. A mother knows. Somehow, impossibly, terribly, a mother knows. At 6:30 p.m. on Friday, March 29th, less than 24 hours after she'd gotten into that gray sedan, Samantha Josephson was officially identified. The identification process was unbearable. Seymour had to look at his daughter's body, had to confirm that yes, this was Samantha. This was his little girl who'd texted him, "I love you," just yesterday, who'd been planning her graduation party, who'd been excited about law school. The images from that room would never leave him. Never. She'd been murdered. The autopsy would reveal details so horrific that even seasoned investigators struggled to process them. Samantha had been stabbed over 100 times. The wounds covered her head, her neck, her torso, her arms, her legs. The medical examiner counted 120 distinct stab wounds, some shallow, some deep, all of them indicating a level of violence that was almost incomprehensible. The attack had been sustained, brutal, absolutely vicious. This wasn't a quick murder. This was prolonged, deliberate savagery, but the defensive wounds on her hands told another story, one that gave her family the smallest measure of comfort in their ocean of grief. Samantha had fought. Her palms showed deep cuts where she'd tried to grab the blade. Her arms showed wounds where she'd tried to block the attacks. Her fingernails contained DNA that wasn't her own, evidence that she'd scratched and clawed at her attacker. Despite being overpowered, despite being trapped, despite facing a weapon and a man larger and stronger than her, she had fought with everything she had. She hadn't given up. She'd never stopped trying to survive. The evidence at the scene painted a clearer picture of Samantha's final moments. Her phone was found nearby, smashed deliberately, likely thrown after she'd tried to call for help. One of her shoes was recovered several feet from her body. The other was missing, later found in Rowland's trunk. Blood trails in the dirt suggested she'd tried to run, tried to escape into the woods, and Nathaniel Rowland had pursued her, attacking her over and over until she couldn't run anymore, until she couldn't fight anymore, until there was nothing left but silence in those dark woods. Time of death was estimated between 3 and 4 a.m. Friday morning, which meant for over an hour after getting into that car, after realizing something was terribly wrong, after understanding that she was in mortal danger, Samantha Josephson had been alive, fighting, trying to survive. She'd been alive while her roommates were still at the bar. She'd been alive while her mother was asleep in New Jersey. She'd been alive, and no one had known to help her. The Columbia Police Department mobilized every available resource. The FBI was called in. The South Carolina Law Enforcement Division joined the investigation. This was no longer just a missing person case. This was a manhunt. Detectives returned to the CCTV footage with renewed urgency. They used enhanced imaging technology on that partial license plate, trying to extract every possible detail. NW and possibly a 5 further in the sequence. They noted every identifying feature of the vehicle: the dent, the missing hubcap, the specific model year based on body style. Then they began the painstaking process of tracing that vehicle's route. Traffic cameras along major intersections were pulled. Security footage from gas stations, convenience stores, any business with cameras pointing toward the street. Slowly, frame by frame, investigators tracked the gray Impala's path out of 5 points. The car had headed southeast toward I-77. It had been captured on a traffic camera at 2:15 a.m., roughly 28 minutes after picking up Samantha. Another camera caught it on a rural road heading toward Clarendon County at 2:47 a.m. The timeline was devastating in its precision. Rowland had driven Samantha to that isolated area, murdered her in those woods, then driven back toward Columbia. By Friday night, every law enforcement officer in the region had the vehicle description. Gray Chevy Impala. Plates starting with NWE, distinctive damage, missing hubcap. If this car was on the road, someone would spot it. Saturday morning, March 30th, a K-9 unit was conducting searches in the Rosewood neighborhood, about 5 miles from where Samantha had been taken. One of the officers noticed a gray Chevrolet Impala parked behind a house on Alpine Road. He walked closer. The plates read NWE 745. The front passenger side was missing a hubcap. There was a dent on the rear panel. The officer looked through the window, and what he saw made him immediately call for backup. The interior of the vehicle was saturated with blood. The passenger seat, the door panels, the floor, the back seat. Massive amounts of blood, dried to a dark brown, covering nearly every surface. In the front seat, a cell phone charger was plugged in. In the back, the child safety locks were engaged, meaning the rear doors couldn't be opened from inside. Someone had been trapped back there. Within minutes, a perimeter was established. Detectives arrived. Forensic teams prepared to process the vehicle, and officers began questioning the residents of the house where the car was parked. The vehicle belonged to Nathaniel David Rowland, 24 years old. He was an acquaintance of the people who lived there, and he was nearby. Officers located Rowland a few blocks away. He was carrying cleaning supplies, bleach, rags. His arms and hands were covered in fresh scratches and cuts, the unmistakable marks of defensive wounds. When someone fights back with everything they have, when fingernails claw and hands grab and a victim refuses to stop resisting, the attacker gets injured too. At 1:30 p.m. on Saturday, March 30th, less than 36 hours after Samantha Josephson had gotten into his car, Nathaniel David Rowland was placed under arrest. He was charged with kidnapping and murder. He said nothing. He showed no emotion. He requested an attorney and refused to speak. But he didn't need to speak. The evidence spoke for him. Forensic teams spent days processing Nathaniel Rowland's vehicle. What they found built an absolutely overwhelming case. Samantha's blood was throughout the interior. Her DNA was found under his fingernails. Her missing shoe was recovered from the trunk. A multi-tool weapon, essentially a hunting knife, was found with her blood still on the blade. And perhaps most damningly, investigators found Uber stickers in his possession. Fake rideshare identifiers he'd been using to impersonate legitimate drivers. Cell phone data traced Rowland's movements that night. His phone had been circling the 5 Points area for over 2 hours before Samantha got into his car. He'd driven past the Bird Dog bar multiple times. He'd been hunting, looking for someone vulnerable, someone alone, someone who would make a mistake. When Samantha stepped outside to order her Uber, Nathaniel Rowland had found his victim. The pattern was clear, deliberate, premeditated. This wasn't a crime of opportunity or passion. This was a predator who had gone hunting. The trial wouldn't begin until July 2021, over 2 years after Samantha's murder. Nathaniel Rowland pleaded not guilty, his defense team arguing that the evidence was circumstantial. But the prosecution's case was ironclad. They showed the CCTV footage of Samantha getting into his car. They presented the blood evidence, the DNA, the weapon. They showed the child safety locks that had trapped her inside. They showed the Uber stickers that proved his pattern of deception. They called the real Uber driver, who testified that Samantha never got into his vehicle. They called forensic experts who detailed the violence of the attack. And they called Samantha Josephson to the stand, where the devastated father delivered a victim impact statement that left the courtroom in tears. On July 27, 2021, after less than 2 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with their verdict. Guilty on all counts: kidnapping, murder, weapons possession. Nathaniel David Rowland was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He showed no remorse. He made no statement. He offered no explanation for why he'd murdered a 21-year-old college student who'd done nothing except make one small mistake. But the Josephson family refused to let their daughter's death be meaningless. Even in their grief, even drowning in the kind of pain that never fully fades, Seymour and Marcy Josephson became advocates. They started the What's My Name campaign, a simple but potentially life-saving initiative. Before getting into any rideshare vehicle, riders should ask the driver one question: what's my name? A legitimate driver will know because it's displayed on their app. A fake driver won't. That single question, taking 5 seconds to ask, could be the difference between getting home safely and getting into a predator's car. The Josephson family traveled to college campuses across the country, showing that CCTV footage of their daughter getting into the wrong car, teaching students the verification steps Samantha didn't take. Check the license plate, check the make and model, check the driver's photo, ask their name. Those 15 seconds of verification could save your life. In April 2019, just weeks after Samantha's murder, South Carolina passed Sammy's Law, legislation requiring all rideshare vehicles to display illuminated signs that are visible from at least 50 feet away. The law also increased criminal penalties for anyone impersonating a rideshare driver. Other states followed, passing similar legislation. Uber and Lyft implemented new safety features in their apps, including in-app emergency buttons and enhanced verification systems. The entire rideshare industry changed because of what happened to Samantha Josephson. Seymour Josephson speaks publicly about his daughter's case, his voice breaking but determined. "I will never forget the moment I got that call," he says. "I will never forget identifying my daughter's body. I will never forget any of it. But if sharing Samantha's story saves even one person from getting into the wrong car, then something good can come from this horror." Marcy Josephson carries a different kind of pain, the guilt that comes with being a mother who couldn't protect her child. "I replay that night constantly," she says through tears. "If only she'd checked the plate. If only she'd asked his name. If only we taught her that one extra step. But we can't change what happened. We can only try to make sure it doesn't happen to someone else's daughter." But here's what the Josephson family wants everyone to understand. It wasn't Samantha's fault. The responsibility for her murder lies entirely with Nathaniel David Rowland. He was the predator. He was the one who drove through those streets looking for a victim. He was the one who deceived her, trapped her, and killed her. Samantha made a small mistake that millions of people make every single weekend. The difference was, she encountered a monster. Samantha Josephson was weeks away from graduating with a degree in political science. She'd been accepted to law school. She wanted to help people, to make a difference, to build a meaningful life. She was a daughter who texted "I love you" to her parents, a sister who protected her younger sibling, a girlfriend, a friend, a young woman with dreams and plans and a future that should have stretched out for decades ahead of her. Instead, she got into a gray sedan at 1:47 in the morning, and the real Uber arrived 2 minutes later, finding no one there. Those 2 minutes changed everything. Those 2 minutes ended one life and destroyed dozens of others. Those 2 minutes created a hole in the Josephson family that will never be filled. But Samantha's legacy isn't just tragedy. It's the laws that bear her name. It's the thousands of college students who now know to verify their rides. It's the safety features implemented by rideshare companies. It's the lives saved by people who heard her story and took those extra 15 seconds to check the license plate, to ask the driver's name, to make sure they were getting into the right car. Nathaniel David Rowland took Samantha Josephson from this world, but he couldn't destroy her impact. He couldn't erase the changes her death created. He sits in prison for the rest of his life, and meanwhile, Samantha continues to save lives. That's what her family holds on to. That's the meaning they've fought to create from meaningless violence. And that's why they keep showing that CCTV footage, keep telling that story, keep asking people to remember. Before you get in, take 15 seconds. Check the plate, check the car, ask the name, because 2 minutes can change everything.